Baby time was getting closer, and although you're never truly prepared, I felt like we did as much as we could. Everything was in place, and we were beginning to read books on how to be good parents. Now it was time for some baby showers. All of our family got together and gave us some amazing gifts to start us out as new parents. Thank you, everyone. There is no gathering as special as the celebration of a new baby. Mom thought a relaxing little getaway to Arizona was maybe a good idea. We drove around in golf carts, did a little bit of golfing, and relaxed in the warm Arizona sunshine. Personally, I prefer mini golf. But it doesn't matter as long as there's palm trees. I sat for a long time in a meditative state, thinking about how the sun was setting on this phase of my life. Although my life was about to go down a very different path, I was as excited as ever as to what was over the next ridge. I truly believe that the meaning of life is life itself. And what greater way to celebrate life than to have a child? Children are why I'm here. But the children weren't here yet. I had to get out of town one last time. Mom asked, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I don't know." I flew into San Fran and booked a room at the Green Tortoise Hostel. The place was kind of a shithole, but it was a good experience for me, and I met a lot of really awesome people. I grabbed a trolley and found my way down to the waterfront. As I stood there, a ferry was coming in, and I thought, that's cool. How do I get on that thing? A few minutes later, I was leaving downtown on a boat with no idea where the day would lead me. Just then, we passed Alcatraz Island, and that was pretty cool. I could even see the Golden Gate Bridge from a distance, and although I had drove over it in the summer of 2005, I had never seen it from the water. I arrived at this quaint little town called Sausalito, which I didn't really know much about, but it was a really beautiful town, and I just went walking around the streets taking photos to see whatever I could see. I was beginning to get hungry, so I found some amazing clam chowder at this cute little place called Skomas. And although the clam chowder was good, you know what they say, it's all about location. I rode the ferry back to town, jumped on an airplane, and flew home to Mom. It looked like I still had time. I was chatting with my neighbor Dave, who's from Boston, and he said, "Listen, man, I got family out there. If you can get me on a free flight, I'll have cars, places to stay, and you won't pay a dime for food. Let's go to Boston." Holy shit, that night we flew to Boston. First stop, Cheers Bar. This was my neighbor Dave, and we were about to embark on quite the adventure. We got to the train station late that night, and I was like, "Dude, where are we going?" And he said, "Newburyport." And I said, "Why are we going to Newburyport?" He said, "That's where my connection is." It must have been 1 in the morning when we stepped off the train and saw a mysterious Jeep parked in the darkness. As it turns out, that was Dave's sister, and she drove all through the night until we were in Kennebunkport. That morning, I woke up much too early in one of the cutest little towns I had ever seen, Kennebunkport, Maine. I was handed a cup of coffee and told, "Get in the Jeep, there's more to see." So I did as I was told. I climbed in the Jeep and we were off again on another adventure. This is the most photographed lighthouse in the world. Cape Elizabeth, Maine. I just had to get intimate with the water, so I climbed down on the rocks as Dave took my photo. Moments after this photo was taken, I was drenched by a giant wave that almost knocked me off the rocks. As I traveled, I had seen a good amount of coastline, but that day I realized I had never seen anything like the coast of Maine. Dave and his sister, whose name escapes me, led me to this little patio overlooking the coastline. I said, "What are we doing here?" And he said, "Just wait, I'll be right back." And this is what he returned with. I've eaten a lot of lobster and a lot of seafood, but it was quite an experience to have a fresh Maine lobster as I sat down on a picnic table overlooking the crashing waves on the coast of Maine. Before I really had any time to process what I was experiencing, Dave was pulling at me again saying, "Get in the Jeep, it's time to go visit Mom." Their mother was a soft-spoken, sweet, and gentle Italian woman known for making sauce. We sat around her beautiful home in Kennebunk, Maine that day as she made sauce for the most wonderful Italian meal I have ever eaten. Bright and early the next morning, we were down on the beach with our toes in the water. After a couple cups of coffee, we were headed out for the day, and they asked me if there was anything else in the area that I wanted to see. I smiled and said, "Take me to the bridge." This innocent-looking little bridge in Concord, Massachusetts might not look like much, but it was here that the historic event took place that marked the beginning of the Revolutionary War, a phrase uttered over the years that you may recognize: "Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes." There was one last place that I had to see: Walden Pond. It was here in these very woods, in a cabin much like this replica, that Henry David Thoreau carried out his social experiment, chronicled in the book Walden. It is one of the few books that I have read several times. Inside the cabin was an actor expertly portraying Henry David Thoreau. Not once did he sway from his period dialect or Thoreau persona. When I asked him if I could take his photograph, he replied, "Ah, I have never had my likeness taken." We shook hands, and that was the end of my Massachusetts experience. That night, we drove back through Boston to Logan Field and flew home to Minnesota.